there folks, my name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl, and it is time for the top 10 of my top 100 games 2015 edition. This is it. We've been building up to this over these last few weeks. My top 10 games that I love the most right now at this point in time. And I think some people will be surprised. I think there's some new blood here. There's also a lot of old favorites returning, but maybe in different positions. So it's going to be pretty interesting. I'm very curious to see what people think about all of this. Now, I'm not going to say too much more here, but I will say that after I get done with this video, I'm also going to film and post at the same time a wrap-up video, just like we did last year, where I'm going to talk about some of my different thoughts about the list as a whole. Why I did some things, why some things fell off, other things that did fall off, we'll list those, and also a lot of different stats that people tend to find interesting. I know that I do. So do tune in for that as well, but without further ado, let's get to my top 10 games right now. My number 10 is brand new to the list, and it is one of the newest, hottest games of the past year, and that is Blood Rage from Cool Mini or Not and designer Eric Lang. Now look, when you cut through all of the hype, and this game just became available at retail very, very recently, so it's starting to get into the hands of people who are not reviewers or Kickstarter backers. When you really get down to it, this is a solid, amazing game, even with all of the hype surrounding it. First and foremost, it's a Cool Mini or Not game that just has stellar production value. The miniatures are amazing, as you would come to expect from Cool Mini or Not, and they're of all different types. I mean, they even went ahead and made 2 different sculpts of the warriors for every tribe, even though they're all the same. And then the artwork is fantastic, the graphic design on the board, the theme is solid. I mean, it's nominally a Viking game, but it's a Viking game in the same way that Star Wars is about magic and space wizards. It's kind of not just necessarily about that, and it's like a fantastical view of Vikings and giant monsters and dark elves that you can control. And that's part of what I love about the game, is that it's just so far out there with the stuff that you can do. And if it was just, hey, area control with Viking miniatures and monsters, that might have been enough to make it a cool game. But the whole card drafting aspect and how you play your cards during combat is amazing. There's just so much cool stuff here. The idea that there are multiple routes to victory and how you can actually lose troops but still gain victory points by sending them to Valhalla, and how some monsters and special cards are actually going to influence that as well, like Loki's cards, which are all about, oh, you lose a battle? Well, now I steal some of your power, or I get more victory points, or things like that. There's so many different routes you can take in the game, and it's very, very, very cool. It's a little bit long, and it is easy for one player to just get completely hosed. I've never had a close game of Blood Rage, or at least maybe a couple of people have been close in points, but the others were not. But even so, I think that for every game, even the ones that I did poorly in, I still felt engaged and involved the entire time. That's the great thing about the game, and it's just fantastic from beginning to end. That is Blood Rage from Cool Mini or Not and Eric Lang. I'll be curious to see if I still have the same opinion next year, but for right now, I could not help but put it into my top 10, even if it's right at the tail end of it. However, Great Red Warrior, appropriately enough, disagrees and says, "This is awful. A bunch of great minis with nonsense rules and some worthless card drafting. Deterministic combat is almost always a bad thing, and here it's even worse, as dying and losing often score points almost as much as winning does. Lots of stupidity at work here, just not fun at all." My number 9 was on last year's list, and it fell down 3 spots from number 6. Not a huge drop. I know within the context of the top 10 that seems monumentous. Monumentous? Monumentous is now a word. I'm decreeing it to be so. But even so, Shadows over Camelot will always have a place somewhere high on my list. This is an amazing semi-cooperative game. Nominally, you and the other players are Knights of the Round Table, who are, including King Arthur himself, who are working together against the evil forces of Mordred. You're working cooperatively, going around to different areas of the kingdom, and playing cards poker style, in like different suits and straights and things like that, in order to fend off catapults that are being placed out, to fight the Black Knight, to fight the dragon, or to bring back Lancelot and his armor who have gone rogue, and to find the Holy Grail. All of these, or find Excalibur. All of these different things that you need to do in true Camelot fashion. However, the trick of the game is that one of you is potentially a traitor. You don't necessarily know. Depending on the number of players, it's more or less likely that one of you is actually a minion of Mordred. But not knowing is part of the fun of the game. That there is some doubt that one of you might be working against the odds of the other players, and that even if you were to get caught and accused successfully, and put out into the open, you are still involved in the games, tripping up the other players. You still have options and agency in the game to do what you need to do to make sure the forces of evil win, and you win on your own. There's an expansion for the game that is excellent, Merlin's Company. It's not essential, but I think that the extra added card variety that it adds, and the possibility of playing with more players and possibly having two of the minions of Mordred, while that does increase the length of the game, and also makes it very interesting because they don't know that each other are bad guys if you do end up with two of them in the game. And I've seen at least one instance where one spy accused the other spy, and they were like, ah! So at the end of it, when they found out who each other was, very, very amusing and fun. I love the game. I know that it can sometimes be accused of being slightly themeless in some regards because of the whole how you play down the numbered cards. Despite that, though, I think you can have a lot of fun with the theme of this game, and the production values in true Days of Wonder fashion are amazing. That is Shadows over Camelot from Days of Wonder, my number 9, only down 3 spots from last year. The Cossack, however, says, and say it with me now, this is not a game. Ding! There are no real decisions to make, no problems to solve, not even a clever mechanic to enjoy. It is shameful how much hype this title has garnered, and it demonstrates an enormous gulf between gamers who wish to actually game versus those who seem satisfied with spectacle and atmospherics. If games were dates, this one is a dumb blonde. This was like 10 years ago, so sexist comments like this sort of went by without a pause on Board Game Geek. My number 8 was also on last year's list. This one actually moved up 1 spot. It's not the only game in the top 10 that has moved up, and that's not a huge leap, but it does show that this game has some staying power, at least for me. That is Heart of Crown from, what's the name of it? Sandals? Something Sandals. Flip Flops, that's what it is. It's the name of the publisher in Japan is Flip Flops, although it will be getting a wide release via Kickstarter from Japanime Games, appropriately enough, next year. They've actually had a Kickstarter plan. It's been delayed, but I think you will see that finally early next year. This is a deck building game that is taking parts of games like Ascension and parts of the one that started it all, Dominion, and adding some other brand new elements to the mix as well. So essentially what happens is you're trying to build up your kingdom, and you have all these different types of kingdom cards, and you will have a row of cards that are slightly randomized in the sense that they come out of the deck random, but then as you're drawing out cards to make your kingdom, you stack up cards of the same type. And then they stay out there, and you don't put new ones out until the entire stack is gone. What this means is that you have a mix of the randomness of a game like Ascension or the DC Deck Builder, but you also have this strategic placement of a game like Dominion mixed together, where you know for quite some time what cards are going to be out there, and you're all working from the same pool, at least for the most part, which is a really interesting mix, and I like how that works. To top it all off, you have this really cool card mechanism where, in most games, like in Dominion, you have to play cards that say, okay, you have one action. If you want to get more actions, you have to play cards that give you more actions, and then you can start chaining your cards together. And Heart of Crown, it's the same type of thing, maybe 6 of one, half a dozen of another, but it feels cooler to me, where cards were going to have different arrows on them pointing in different directions. And if you play one card and you can match it up to another card in the same direction, then you can build a chain. So now it's like sort of a tactile thing where you're actually building chains of cards in front of you to kick off different actions, and that's going to determine how you want to buy cards. On top of that, then you add into the mix the whole idea of you actually having your kingdom. So you have all these different princess cards, and this is one of the reasons why people don't like the game, because you're buying princesses. Well, whatever. You're nominating princesses, and you're going to take one from a set stack that you have, each of them having a very cool, very powerful special ability they'll grant you for the rest of the game. But when you take that princess, you're going to actually start your kingdom and be able to stow away cards over there in your kingdom, which is another, this is this game's way of culling your deck. But the cards that you start off with there determine how many cards you can cull there. So however many lands you put there, that determines your kingdom. So that feels very thematic to me, and you can stow your point cards there, or even your negative point cards. But if you stow your negative point cards there, you're not drawing them, but you are going to be saddled with those negative points at the end of the game. So very, very interesting. I love everything about this game. I can't wait for a full English release. I need to explore the expansions that I have beforehand. before they're completely useless, and they just print English versions anyways. But I love the game no matter what. I love the theme. I love the anime style artwork, and it just is really, really, really solid. I can't wait for more people to try it. That is Heart of Crown from Flip Flops, and soon to be released from Japanime Games. Now, there was not any, because not many people have played this game, there wasn't any kind of good, interesting, negative review for it. So instead, I grabbed an Amazon review of Kingdom Hearts, because that's one of the first things that pops up when you try to look for Heart of Crown on Amazon. So I figured, close enough. Madison says, overall, playing this game felt like trying to dismantle a ticking time bomb with no tools, where touching one wire could mean death. Stressful, confusing, and definitely not fun. And after a while, it doesn't even matter that the bomb is decorated with beloved characters and bright colors. Thoughtful. My number 7 is new to the top 10, but not new to the list. It actually moved up 4 spots from number 11 last year, so it found its way into the top 10. And this would officially be my top-rated and ranked deck builder. Just by one, obviously, because Heart of Crown was number 8. And that is Legendary, a Marvel deck building game. I've loved this game for some time, but it has been slowly moving up in my estimation as the expansions have come out. And yes, let's answer the obvious question first. Nick, up to this point, we have not seen legendary encounters, either alien or predator. If I'm saying that this is the top-ranked deck builder, what does that mean? Well, for me, it means that I'm not necessarily lumping them all in together. I would say that I am picking Marvel Legendary as the one of that system that is representative for me. If I had to pick from those 3 games at any given point, I'd always pick the Marvel version to play. And despite how good each of the other systems are on their own, I think that this one does enough of what those games do to sort of replace it for me. I still have the other ones. They're great for a fully cooperative experience, and if I want to feel like I'm playing through those movies, that's a great thing. But for me, there's so many cool expansions out for Marvel Legendary at this point, and it's cooperative enough for my taste that I get the same feeling, and it just does it better for me. I know some other people vehemently disagree with me. I think Legendary Encounters Alien is far, far ahead of Marvel Legendary on BGG's top 100 list, but I still like the Marvel system better. It's just how it is. And if you're not familiar with the game, it's deck building Ascension style. However, you're building up a deck of cards to purchase from all the different heroes of the Marvel Universe, and now villains as well. And then you're fighting against a mastermind or a commander. They're the same thing. Either a good guy or bad guy, mastermind who is controlling all the other villain groups who are coming out into a city and flooding the city, and you need to stop all of them and eventually defeat the mastermind and all of his stuff. First you start off with like measly either shield agents or Hydra agents, but then you work your way up to getting all these different hero cards, and you chain together combos. There's a really intricate system of chaining together different icons to get different effects. And at this point, there are so many heroes and villains and scenarios and plots and masterminds and henchmen. So many of all these different cards from all the different expansions that any kind of hero or villain that you like, at this point, I have to say, is undoubtedly in the system. I mean, especially the last 2 sets, including Secret Wars Volume 2, which just came out, which I just got my hands on. Some characters I've never even heard of before. I'm not a Marvel expert, but I would have been like, wow, I've never even known that existed before. So, pretty surprising. They've gone through every little nook and cranny, and there's still more to come. And I love it. I could deal with even more. Give me 100% more expansions, and I would still love the game. There could never be too much for me because I love the variety. I love the gameplay. Yes, the setup and teardown is a bit of a bitch, but it's still a fantastic game despite that. Upper Deck really has a winner on their hands with this one. And again, I love the Encounters games. I just overall love the amount of content that's out from Marvel at this point, and the theme works a lot better for me. So that is Marvel Legendary, a Marvel deck building game from Upper Deck, my number 7. Hal Bauer says, mediocre deck building game. There is virtually no theme. I know lots of people claim this game has theme, but they are all unilaterally wrong. Did I say, wait. Did I say mediocre deck building game? I meant shitty deck building game. My number 6 is also from last year's list, and it has moved up 2 spots from number 8. And this is one of the games I have played on top of other games like Legendary, which I played all the time as well. But Imperial Settlers, my number 6, I have played a lot in the past year, namely because a couple of expansions came out, which are really cool. They're not really going to change anyone's mind about the game, but this is the type of game that you can continue to expand with content, and it just gets more and more and more interesting for people who already love it, and that is the case. The Atlanteans expansion has been excellent. If you're not familiar with the game, very quickly, it's a sort of a civilization building game in the lightest of terms. It's more of a hand management card drafting game. You each start off with a different empire with your own set faction deck, along with a common deck of cards, and you're using these with a small player board that you have to build out your civilization with production buildings, with feature buildings that are going to give you bonuses based on the other type of buildings that you have built, and you have common buildings which you will all be drafting from every round, but then you have faction buildings which give you a complete unique feel than any of the other players. So for instance, the Egyptians are really adept at getting gold, which is going to be like a very universal thing that they can use in place of other types of resources. Whereas the Romans and the barbarians are all about attacking for the most part and raising other people's buildings. And the Japanese are one of the really difficult factions to use because it's easy to kill their faction buildings, but on the other hand, the balancing factor is they get a ton of points from their faction buildings, so people have to worry about that. And the New Atlanteans expansion is even stranger because they don't get a lot of points, or it's like they don't get points at all from their faction buildings or something like that. I'm sorry, I'm struggling right now to think about the details of that, but some of their buildings sink over time and stuff like that. But at the same, or maybe that's why they don't get points thematically. But at the same time, you're putting out these gears that give your buildings more points as you activate them. It's just every faction is different, and I love that variety. But at the same time, there's really solid mechanisms tying them all together of hand management, resource management, using a card for multiple things. I love that aspect of the game, and I love the artwork and design despite the tiny text of all of the cards. So really, really love this game. And again, this is another one of those games that's been a hit with everyone that I've played it with. I've introduced this to even newer gamers, despite how the fact that it's like a midweight game. People just glom onto it. It's easy to get into. After you play your first game, you're like, oh, wow, now I get it. I want to play again. That is Imperial Settlers from Portal Games. Solid game. I love it. However, the Phantom Stranger himself, a celebrity, disagrees and says, I hate this game. I played it once, and it was a bad combination of frustration and boredom. It ruined my night. Terrible. All right, we are up to the top 5. This is so exciting. My number 5 is actually down 2 spots from number 3 last year. Not a huge drop. If you're in the top 5, you're pretty amazing. That is Eldritch Horror, which is the spiritual successor to Arkham Horror. And for me, whatever lingering, small, tiny desire I had to play the ultimately pretty boring Arkham Horror was completely killed and stomped out of existence by Eldritch Horror, which is a phenomenal game that replaces a lot of these different types of adventuring, world-trotting Cthulhu games. Essentially, you and the other players are going around the globe from country to country, continent to continent, trying to put an end to the rise of one of these great old ones, the great ancient Cthulhu gods, or Cthulhu himself, or his spawn. And as the game progresses, things get more and more dire. Monsters keep popping up. You go to each different location and flip over a card of the appropriate deck and have an adventure and have tests. And it is very simple at its core. There's a ton of different bits and components in true Fantasy Flight game style. But I love the adventure. I love the feeling of you globe-trotting with the other players and having to deal with all of these different things, and you get these really cool weapons and artifacts, and but you might have to take these negative cards that every time you get to a certain point in the game, you're going to have a reckoning, and they might come to pass, and having to deal with that. You can be crazy and insane, but also have a giant flaming sword and go fight Cthulhu. I love the adventurous, just like Indiana Jones meets Cthulhu theme of the game. Some people don't like that. Some people think that every Cthulhu game should just be incredibly dark, morose storytelling experience, or that it should have like incredibly overpriced miniatures in order to be able to play it. Eldritch Horror is an example of a phenomenal game that gets the sort of dark theme, but also makes it fun and engaging for a lot of different people. It's a very long game, it's a very involved game, but because the actual turn-to-turn gameplay is so simple, I think it's going to work for a lot of different people, especially people who want a more thematic experience. I really love everything about it. A new expansion is coming out this month, which will be sort of a... If it does come out in time, it's going to be just like last Christmas when I was playing. I remember Christmas Day playing the Mountains of Madness expansion, which was a pretty interesting experience while I was watching Die Hard. That's one of the memories that will always stick with me. But I hope that I get to play the Under the Pyramids expansion very soon, and they can just keep pumping out more and more expansions for this. I'll be very happy, just like with Marvel Legendary. That is Eldritch Horror from Fantasy Flight Games, easily my number 5. Johnny Spies disagrees and says, move, draw a card, roll dice, some random shit happens, laugh or cry at the result, roll dice again, some random shit happens, and then repeat for 4 hours. Wow, is this great? My number 4 moved up one spot from last year. Who knows if it's going to go much higher. This might be about where it's going to sit, give or take one, which is perfectly fine. That is Dead of Winter, which was also brand new to anyone's list last year. It just came out fall of last year from Plaid Hat Games. To this point, as you can tell, at least from my personal list, this is Plaid Hat Games' magnum opus. It is a phenomenal game that breaks different genre conventions and gameplay conventions just all over the place. It's a zombie game, but it's not about running around and gunning down zombies like Zombicide. It's about the people involved, which is more like The Walking Dead as opposed to Dawn of the Dead, where you are trying to survive, but your other players are going to be working against you. They built this game as a meta-cooperative game, and while I don't typically like made-up buzzwords like that, I think it applies here because you are working together, but you all have your own special secret goal, which you all have to be working towards, and that's known knowledge. But then one of the players may potentially be a traitor who is not only has a secret goal, but their secret goal is killing everyone else and making sure they're the only person that wins. The whole aspect of, even despite the betrayer, that you can all win the scenario, but not everyone is going to win because they didn't meet their own secret goal is fascinating enough. Throwing a traitor into the mix is incredibly fascinating given that context, because it's like, okay, you're doing a lot of shady stuff. We clearly need food, but you seem to be obsessed with getting guns. Even though we may fail and lose a lot of morale, which is incredibly deadly right now, because you're focused on getting guns. But maybe they're not a bad guy. They just need to make sure that they win their own special secret goal. So they need those guns, whatever your scenario objective might be, or whether you need to build as many barricades as possible. That aspect is fascinating. Never knowing whether someone is just being selfish by necessity in order to win the game, or selfish because they want to win the game and murder everyone else. And there's solid mechanisms to back it up. The crossroads system is incredible. I think you're going to start seeing more of that type of system in more and more games, where you draw a card, watch someone's turn to see if a really cool story, thematic event happens, and then a monumental choice has to be made. I love it. There's more of these types of games coming out. Unfortunately, the next theme is going to be space. The rest of us were outvoted on that. We wanted it to be Samurai or Summer Camp of Doom. But nevertheless, I will play any game that has this system because it is just that good. And there's an expansion for Dead of Winter in particular coming out very soon as well. Can't wait for that. That is Dead of Winter, easily my number 4. Hoffcore says, "You have no agency. This is a great game," there it is again, "for unintelligent people. If you are too intelligent to believe rolling better is an intelligence-based skill, then this is nothing but a terrible slog through a boring game." Terrible game. My number 3 is, I think, the oldest game on my list, if you take into account all the various editions of it. But the edition that I started off with and play to this day, and in my opinion, the best edition of it, was printed in, I believe, 2008 from Fantasy Flight Games, and that is Cosmic Encounter. It is only down one spot from last year. Last year, it was number 2 on the list. Cosmic Encounter, I mean, there's a lot of reviewers who love this game. It's got a very storied history, and again, it's an older game, which you might think, like, for the most part, most older games just don't hold up today, because you have to think of, not in the same way that, like, for instance, old music holds up, because you have to think of games as a progression. It's a whole set and mix of elements and different mechanisms, and of course those improve as time goes on. And yes, Cosmic Encounter has improved drastically, but it is really saying something that the core of this game stays universally loved. And the idea of everyone playing a different alien species with wildly different powers, just break the game. Every power completely breaks the game. That whole concept is always going to be loved. And again, I've said this multiple times throughout the course of this list, even just within this particular top 10, that I love games that have variety. I love games that make everyone feel different than everyone else. And the idea that I'm coming to the game with an alien race that can say, well, I get an infinite amount of ships, or my power is infinite, or I double the power of all of my cards, or I am able to heal people, or I can multiply my ships, or whatever the case may be, whatever weird game-breaking power I have, the fact that I'm the only one that has that, and you either need to gang up on me, or team up with me, or ignore me, or there's all these different aspects of the game. You might not have the most powerful power in the game. You might be objectively worse than the other aliens, but that means that people aren't going to see you as much of a threat. So they'll say, yeah, I'll take your help when we go through alliances. That's the other aspect of the game that is so fun, that you build alliances during the course of the game. You negotiate with people, sometimes literally with negotiate cards, but then you can also say like, okay, you help me out with the next battle, and then we'll win together. Let's win together. And then the inevitable betrayal, in most cases, that happens afterwards is always fun. The whole aspect of the card selection and like, everyone puts down a card, flips a card. I've always loved that mechanism. It works very well here. The whole double blind of, hey, I'll put a negotiate card down, and if you put a negotiate card down, we just give each other a colony and we're good to go. And that inevitable betrayal, which always rears its ugly head at least once every couple of games, I love it. This is an amazing game. I know that sometimes so many people rate this so highly that you might think, oh, it's just an overhyped game. And I thought that way too. I'll tell you what, honestly, I bought this game based purely on recommendations very early on in my modern board gaming life and played it the first couple times and was like, this is garbage. I can't believe I got talked into this. Got talked into a third game and was like, I kind of like this now. And then I played it again. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like this. It's even better. And then it just became amazing for me because this is very dependent on the people that you play with and having the right mindset. That is Cosmic Encounter, the most recent addition from Fantasy Flight Games. My number 3, only down 1 spot from number 2 last year. But ASFHGWTW5C13 says, why won't they let this overrated, chaotic piece of crap follow the law of entropy? All right, well, we are up to number 2. This is incredibly exciting. And my number 2 game of right now that I love the most at this point in history, 2015 edition, is actually down 1 spot from number 1 last year, and that is Seasons. Seasons was my number 1 rated game last year, and it is still a game, obviously, that I love tremendously. It's difficult to say, to kind of put it into words, but when I was putting together all of the games that I wanted to explore and try out early on, and when I was really getting into modern board gaming a few years ago, Seasons was a game that I just saw highly rated on Amazon. It had recently come out at that point, and it was a lot of people were talking about it. It had amazing artwork, and so I gravitated towards it for that reason. And the theme, which as it turns out is not terrifically strong in the game, of battling wizards, putting out different cards, appealed to the Magic game player in me at the time. I was still firmly with a foot in that world and wanted to make a transition, and that's why I gravitated towards Seasons. What I found was a game that is some of the best, deepest, richest resource management, hand management, card drafting around. It's really incredible what they managed to do with this system. To have this idea of, first off, you have there are games that make their entire central mechanism card drafting. For this game, it's only the prelude. That's what they call it, the prelude. You build up your hand of cards that you're going to be playing with for the rest of the game. That in and of itself is fascinating enough. But then to put those cards into different ages of time, 3 different years that you play in game, and not having access to those cards until that point. And then having to work with that knowledge, knowing that, okay, I have to be building up my resources. I have to get my engine going in order to play these cards throughout these different years. And there's so many layers to this game. When is the best time to play these cards? When can I leave these alone and worry about them later? How do I build up my engine to get to that point? Should I be drawing more and more and more cards during the course of the game, knowing that if I can't cast my cards by the end, I'm going to be taking penalties for them? Should I be focusing on cards that attack the other players as much as possible? Should I be focusing on cards that just, give me some sort of like crystal manipulation that I can constantly be switching out tokens for, the energy tokens for more crystals? There's so many different routes to victory that you have in the game based on the cards that you choose, but also it's not just purely sort of dull, strategic, forward thinking. It's tactical, on the fly. Do I want to take this card? What can I do with this? Can I put it into my tableau and make it work? You are restricted just enough. I hate it when games are too restrictive, but this one restricts you and makes you forces you to think very creatively about how you want to proceed. My summoning gauge can only go so far. I can only have so many cards out. Is this card that useful to me right now, or should I use this other card to sack it and get some much needed crystals that I need right at this point in time? There's so many different objectives, or so many different ways that you can go through the game, and it's all couched in this beautiful, beautiful presentation. I love the artwork. I love the chunky dice. The physical components are amazing as well. Just the way that the board looks. This is what draws people in initially, and when they stick around long enough to really get the flavor and feel of the game, what keeps them there is how solid it is. You can play this game on Board Game Arena right now if you don't believe me, and that is a very excellent way to play. I think it really is best with 2 or 3 players. With 4 it can go a little bit long, but even still, I love this game. I've always felt engaged with it. It's always been a hit with everyone I've introduced it to. I have made some people in my group longtime Seasons fans because they're like, oh, you always talk about this game. How good could it be? Oh, this game is actually amazing. Nick, thanks for introducing it to me. So much so that it's one of the few games that I have had to sleeve every card of because it gets so much play. Those cards were starting to disintegrate, and I've always said, for me, based on how many different types of gamers there are in my group from different backgrounds and different play styles, for them to all conglomerate together around a game and enjoy it that much is a sign that there is something special there, and it just so happens that I agree with them and love it too. That is Seasons from Asmodee and Libelud, my number 2, down 1 spot from last year, which means that there is a new game in the top spot. We've only done this for 2 years, so I guess that's not that much of a surprise. What could it be? Well, first we have to talk about the second opinion of Seasons, which is WK Over, who says, Seasons would make a good Halloween costume, as the game's lack of development is genuinely frightening. My assumption is that 95% of the game budget was thrown at the card artists, and the rest went into the colored ink in the rulebook. None of the money went into playtesting, that's for sure. Well, as I've already said, we have a new number 1 this year. In fact, this game is brand new to my list, and it's skyrocketed all the way up to number 1, which will probably shock some people, will probably get some people angry, and probably have people who are not even surprised by its existence on the list say, wow, number 1? And I gave it a lot of thought and came to the conclusion that though it felt weird to put it all the way up at number 1, if I didn't, it wouldn't be being true to how I feel right now at this point in time. I've always been very honest about how I rate games and what I feel about them, and I needed to be true to myself and what I really felt. And that is that Kingdom Death Monster is most definitely my number 1 game at this point in time. It's also one of the newest games on my list. It came out back in September, or at least it hit Kickstarter backers in early September. Now, there's going to be, I'll just address this up front. There is this tendency that anytime there is a very hyped game that happened to be funded through Kickstarter, that people who love the game, who rate it very highly on Board Game Geek, and it does, it's been climbing up the rankings steadily despite not being in that many people's hands and getting incredibly good ratings, that these people are all just enamored with the idea of this being this hyped game from Kickstarter, this whole big box of plastic, and that we're all trying to justify the game's existence and the amount of money that we spent on the game, which was considerable, and that we have to give it a good rating because otherwise, what was the point of all of this? To that, I would say this. So much time has passed since Kingdom Death Monster was originally funded on Kickstarter, and there have been so many opportunities during the course of production for everything to fall apart, like so many Kickstarter projects do. For people to say, well, we haven't heard anything. We still don't have the game in our hands. It's delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. We still don't have a full rulebook. We still haven't seen a full gameplay video. This is going to be a complete and utter disaster. And for sure, even those of us who were the faithful, who were hanging on, waiting for this game eagerly, we're starting to have our doubts. To the point where myself and a lot of other people near the end were saying, well, at least we'll have some really cool miniatures. That seems to be without a doubt. I mean, let's just look at it like that and try to stay positive. And then we got the game in our hands. And we realized that every bit of anticipation we had, hoping that this game would be amazing, was not only justified, that it exceeded our expectations across the board in every level. This is thematic storytelling, board game storytelling of the highest order, backed up by solid, innovative, interesting mechanics and mechanisms, however you want to say it, that just bring up that thematic storytelling to a higher level. You are a group of survivors working cooperatively together in this hell world that is never thoroughly explained. You just know it's a place of utter darkness other than your magical lanterns, and that there are monsters constantly besieging you. You have to kill those monsters. You have to live. This is a game of survival, and it makes you feel that at all points. You care about your survivors. You don't want them to die. You always feel desperate and be under the gun in order to live. But you eventually do live, sometimes. And you take what's left of that monster and you feed your people, and you make more people, and you build up a civilization slowly but surely. You make innovations. You make gear and equipment to equip on your survivors and make them stronger. You go through storyline events that introduce new aspects and mixes to your civilization and new random events. And then you go back out again and you go on a whole other hunt phase, which is highly thematic, of tracking down your quarry and killing it again to feed your people again. But then nemesis might pop up and you have to face them, like really horrible, dire situations that can be incredibly brutal for your civilization. But you have to survive and you have to keep going. And all of this is richly detailed with storyline elements and beautiful artwork and design and incredible miniatures. And I understand that this theme is not going to be for everyone. People don't like the dark aspects of it. There's even some artwork that, even though I know it's high quality in the book, that makes me squeamish. It's hard for me to look at. And I know that people don't like putting miniatures together. And I know that the Kickstarter campaign had these pin-up models of scantily clad women that have nothing to do with the gameplay proper. I know that people know all of these things, and that's what they worry about. And that's why they will never play this game. And I'm not going to try to talk them into it. This is not a game for everyone. But I will say this. If you can get past those surface elements, this is one of the richest gameplay experiences I have ever had, or probably ever will have. Everything works together fully. It's a full game of you going from the fighting to building your civilization to hunting, or I'm sorry, the opposite order, hunting, fighting, building up your civilization, and doing it again. It never feels repetitive. It always feels like you are building up this grand civilization all the way to your 25th Lantern year. It is possible that next year, when I do my top 100 again, that this won't be in my number one. That perhaps it is so fresh in my mind that I've been so obsessed with it for the last few months that it will just fade away and drop down. But it's also possible that when I get the whole tremendous pile of expansions I have coming to me, that I will love this game even more. That it will solidify its number one spot. That is certainly how it feels right now, because even now, having explored most of the stuff in the game, I want to play it again. Like, right this second. If I didn't have horrible lack of time, I would do it again right now. That's how much I love the game. It's an incredible experience. I know it's expensive, but if you ever have a chance to try it, you owe it to yourself to do so. That is Kingdom Death Monster, my new number one game, at least for this year, 2015. And that's the list. I'm sorry. I guess we do have to give a second opinion there. And here's a special one. Not a Real Person says, gives it a 1 rating. A special rating for Nick Minahan. People say it's a good game, so it seems I'm just being a jerk for no good reason. And that about sums it up, doesn't it, folks? But thank you so much for sticking with me. I know it was a long process. I know there was a lot of ups and downs and lots of different varied games and lots of shocks and surprises, but I had a lot of fun doing this, and we are not done quite yet. I'm going to have a wrap-up video that comes up at the same time as this one. You can go ahead and watch that right now, where we are going to talk about just my thoughts on the list as a whole, and also go over some different ratings and stats and things like that people find interesting. I know that I do as well. So thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. We'll do it all again next year. Take care.
We come accusing.